Okay, so now we want to look at this idea of putting in a Nurbs curve. This is the object that we're going to use to control the way we shape our panels. And the distance between any given point up here at the start of the panel and this blue line, the shortest point, will determine the length of one of these tiles that we put in. So it's important that we make this Nurbs curve. And then if we modify this Nurbs curve, the shape of the ceiling will change appropriately, which is what the power of this kind of parametric programming is. So we're just going to step through right now this idea of creating a Nurbs curve, laying out some points, and then connecting the lines with a curve. So here we are back in our modeling environment. And as you remember, these are sitting up in space. We're going to make our Nurbs curve down on the bottom plane here. And we can start by actually just putting a point down. So once again, we'll use the point by coordinate. You'll notice that point pops out right away. And we really want these points to be kind of at the midway. We want to have them out to be out at the 10-point level. So let's go ahead and start inserting some numbers to give us those kind of alignments. So I'm going to move this down a little bit. And I'm going to use a code block to actually help us insert a bunch of numbers at one time. And I think we'll just come up with a series of numbers. We want the 0 point, let's say. We want the 10 point, which is the mid-range. We want something that's a little bit larger because it'll be the curvy part of it, and 20 will be the end point. So I just typed those in with a semicolon after each of them. If I click off of it, you'll notice that each one of those gets a little arrow on it for a wire connector. And so you can see if I connect 20 to X, this point will move out to the other edge. So I'm getting 20 coming out of here. 14 will come out of here. If I go to 10, let's say I'll put 10 in there, and that'll move back to the midpoint. So these give us ways of reusing these numbers in multiple ways in our project. But like I said, we want that point, this point here, to be sitting out over the middle of the panel on the floor. So we don't really want it to be right now as it is in the X direction. We really want to start out with it being in the Y direction. So I'm just going to pull this off and hook it up to the Y. So now we have a start point, and I'll just copy and paste, and we'll move it over to 20 feet in the X direction, and we get an end point. So now we have a starting point at 10:0 and an end point at 10:20. What we need now is that midpoint. So I'll do a copy and a paste again. And we know that we want that. Now we don't want 20 in for our Y coordinate. We don't want it to be in the center. So I'm going to put for our X coordinate. So I'm going to put that in there. So now we have, if you look, we have X is 10 and Y is 10. So this is sitting right in the very center. So right now we would have a straight line between these. And let me go ahead and demonstrate how that is a straight line. We're going to now make our curve. And the way we do that is, I have all of this open. Let me close it back off again. I'm going to go to Geometry, and I'm going to go to Curves, and I'm going to go to Nurbs Curves. We could use other curves, but this is just the one I chose. And we're going to use it by just points. So I select by points, and we have a Nurbs curve. But we have this requirement that the Nurbs curve have multiple points. And our problem is, if we try to put multiple points into here, Dynamo won't allow us to do that. It'll just error out. And so we have to use another technique, and that's called making a list of them. So I'm going to right-click and type in list, and list create will show up. And this allows us to keep adding in items that we want to add together to complete a full list. So I'm going to take each one of those points now and add them together in a list. And then take that list and feed it into the Nurbs curve. And now we have a straight line Nurbs curve. The only thing we want to do differently is we want to now move this in a direction so that it has some curved shape to it. So instead of using 14 for the Y value, I'm going to change it, or excuse me, 10 for the Y value, I'm going to change it to 14. I could also have this, just to show you the idea of flexibility, right? We could duplicate our slider, Oops, I made two of them, sorry. And we could feed this in for our y value. And now we can make a slider to adjust that. And actually, I might just leave that in for the fun of it. So we're going to go ahead and rename this node. We'll call it curve shape. And now we have the flexibility of being able to move that line back and forth. So that's, we now have our panels, at least the start of our panels up at the top and the start of our curve below. And next we'll start looking at advancing the shapes and changing the lengths of them.